Okay. So, hello everyone, and thanks for bringing me in this way. As Brendan said, I'm going to talk about community valuation of threatened species protection. This is part of Project 6.1 within the Hub, and this was quite a small piece of work that was requested by the department, by the Office of Environmental Science and Economics, and it consists simply of a review and synthesis of existing research on monetisation of the benefits resulting from threatened species management. So it's about the attitudes of the community to threatened species protection and restoration, but it's about converting those values into a monetised form. And there's a report which is available on the Hub website. The web address is at the bottom there. There's several authors, 5 authors as you can see on the right there, and some of us are from the Uni of WA and a couple from Charles Darwin University as well. So this is already available, you can download it if you're interested in more detail. This work was focused on a particular aspect of the benefits of threatened species protection, and that is what we call the non-market benefits, or the unpriced benefits from protection or recovery of threatened species or ecological communities. And within that broad category, there's a number of different types of values that we're interested in. We're interested in existence values, bequest values, cultural values, and maybe, in some cases, recreational related values. So existence values, so the top 3 there are all non-use values. So they're all values that arise from basically people's attitudes and preferences, even though they may not actually interact with these species in any tangible way. So the existence value is what you feel about the fact that something still exists, it's still out there, you care for it, even without interacting with it. Bequest value is about wanting to hand on things to future generations. Cultural values is pretty obvious, I think. And the first 3 there, the non-use values, are generally estimated using survey-type approaches, and there's a number of different ways that can be done, which I'm not going to talk about in any detail. I'm just going to talk about the results of them today. You can get more background on them if you want to in the report. And the relevance of this work is twofold. One potential contribution of this work is to support arguments for public funding for threatened species initiatives, to make the case that it's worth, the business case that it's worth the investment, perhaps through including these numbers in a benefit cost analysis or something similar. And the other aspect is to try and assist with decision making. One way it may help is through helping with comparisons of the benefits of different types of environmental projects by expressing those benefits in a common currency, which is currency, obviously, in dollars. And the other one is helping us to assess whether the overall benefits of an investment are likely to exceed the overall costs. So there's a number of different possible ways that this type of information could be used. So we managed to identify about 75 different studies that have been conducted around the world, mostly not in Australia, as you can see from this table. Almost half were from the US, and then a modest number from the UK and Australia, and then there's a long tail after that with about another, let's say, 16 other countries where there'd be 1, 2, 3 or 4 such studies. But in Australia we were able to identify 7 studies, so more than most other countries, but still not many. And when we categorised those various studies into which types of species were being studied, the great majority were animals, and the great majority of those were mammals or birds. There were some studies on fish, a smaller number on reptiles, and then not much on anything else. And only 1 study of an insect, which was the monarch butterfly in the US, 1 study of a plant, which was an iconic water lily in Japan, and no studies related to ecological communities. So there's been some work done, but there's some fairly big gaps in the literature that exists. So I just wanted to quickly show you some, the headline results from some of the Australian studies. Not all of these are very recent. This is an older study from 2001 looking at Leadbetter's possum. And very briefly, the result of this study was a best bet valuation, a willingness to pay of about $29 per year per Victorian household back in about 2000. And when they aggregated that up, they got a conservative estimate of $40 million per year, but the range was up to $100 million per year depending on how they did the aggregation. So fairly large numbers, and substantially larger than what they said at the time was the level of expenditure on conservation of flora and fauna in Victoria at that time of $10 million. I don't know what they included in that $10 million, how broadly that covers, but that was a comparison that they made. And they also noted that this $40 million figure was about 3 times the value generated from timber harvesting in the relevant areas. Another study, a more recent one, was by Kirsten Zander. She's one of the co-authors of our report, and some colleagues, who did a national survey of willingness to pay for bird conservation. And the way they sort of presented that to respondents was that they had the opportunity to contribute to a fund that would be used for bird conservation. The median that came from that survey was $11 per person per year. Doesn't sound like a great deal, but if you aggregate it nationally, it comes in on the assumptions behind that aggregation. Something of the order of $70 million per year, you can see at the bottom there. This was a study that highlighted that the responses that you get are quite diverse. There's a lot of heterogeneity in attitudes to threatened species conservation. And in fact, they found that only 45% of respondents were willing to pay, had a willingness to pay greater than zero. So most people said zero. And on top of the 45%, another 15% said that they were broadly in favour of bird conservation and on public funding for bird conservation, but that they personally couldn't afford it. But then there was another 40% that said, no, we think the right number is zero. And then there's a collection of studies, all involving Clem Tisdall, an economist based in Queensland, and all of which were focused on willingness to pay of the population of Brisbane. So these are not national studies, these are focused on Brisbane. And you can see there's a variety of different species that they've looked at: gliders, koalas, Juneau's wombat, golden-shouldered parrot, tree kangaroo, and hawksbill turtle. And these questions were asked in a variety of ways, and I've tried to convert them so that they're all expressed in the same way, which is dollars per person per year. And it's quite interesting. There's a reasonable consistency apart from the glider study. The others all found reasonably consistent results for those various species. And aggregating those up, considering the population of Brisbane, they would be really very large investments in protection of those species if they were to be invested. All right, so I've only got a short amount of time, so I'm going to just quickly touch on this. I mentioned that most studies were for the US. There has been one meta-analysis, in fact 2 meta-analyses. The most recent was done in 2009. Looked at 31 American studies. The average of those studies in that meta-analysis, sort of independent of species, across all species, the average willingness to pay was about $8 per household per year for a given species. But that's quite a big number if you aggregate that across the whole of the US. The surveys found numbers as high as $300 million for residents of Washington State for anadromous fish, which is fish that migrate up rivers and spawn up rivers. So that was the result in the US. The studies, I mentioned heterogeneity in the studies, and There's been efforts to try and understand that heterogeneity. Why are there differences? What determines the differences in people's attitudes to threatened species conservation and their positiveness of attitudes and willingness to pay. A fairly consistent finding is that the biggest factor is the conservation status or rarity of the species. That seems to be really a dominant consideration, so that's why I put 3 asterisks against that. But beyond that, there's a whole range of things, most of which I think are pretty common sense. Charisma or likability, or whether a species is a national symbol, people's knowledge about the species, their proximity to it. That can go either way. There's been some studies looking at large carnivores, which found that proximity, understandably, was viewed as a negative thing, but for things that are nice, proximity was a good thing. And then sort of personal characteristics like income, education level, age, and people's personal attitudes to the environment in general have all been found to be influential. And then just to finish up, other things that we looked at in the paper, we identified a number of examples where studies of this type have been reported by the researchers as having a significant impact on policy or management. And we found a number of examples like that, including cases where these results had been used in advocacy or where they had influenced the analysis of a program, sort of a program impact type assessment, and 1 or 2 cases where they'd influenced the setting of fees for access to parks or national parks and that sort of thing. In one case in Nepal, the park fees were actually raised as a result of one of these studies and found to raise a lot more money for conservation as a result. We've also canvassed various barriers to the uptake, and there's a few reasons there why these studies might not be more widely used. And then we also talk about a number of future research directions, including what I hope we can do in this hub, which is to bring economics thinking to threatened species conservation more broadly. So these types of studies is one relatively narrow aspect of environmental economics. There's a whole lot of other things that I hope we're able to bring in to the hub. All right, I'll leave it there.